All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the City Commission work session meeting, May 8th, 2023. First on the agenda, we have the Lumberjacks renovation presentation. Come on up, please. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Rose with the Muskegon Lumberjacks, and we are here to present plans for proposed locker room, office, and support space renovation and expansion of Trinity Health Arena. In exchange, we're asking for 10 years added to the end of our contract, and Jonathan and attorney John Schreier have been really fantastic in negotiating with us and entering into those conversations. So I think today here we're just wanting to present our concepts and see if there's any questions that we can answer for you all. We did open for public comment on our website and received no feedback. I did receive one phone call from Mr. Paul Sickinga. I'm sure that name is probably relevant, and he wanted to speak with me regarding Americans with Disabilities Act access into the arena, which I have not been able to connect with him yet, but will be doing so. So with that being said, I have John Witten here with Spark 43 Architects, and we can answer any questions that you have and walk you through proposed spaces. Very good.
So what you're seeing on the screen is the packet we prepared for the last city commission meeting. I'm trying to remember, I think this was we turned this in end of April, mid of April. But just for reference, the space we're looking at renovating in the arena, if you can see my little cursor moving, is this red box. So it's the true north corner of the arena. Currently, this is a one-story space that the Lumberjacks occupy their coaching offices in, and all of the access to the ice level of the arena comes through an overhead door right here. So I wanted to show this just to kind of give the quick overview. I'm going to get to the actual detailed plans, but these are examples of the existing space usage versus the proposed space usage and the proposed addition. And again, if there's a lag or if you have something something specifically you want me to stop and address, I'm more than happy to do that. We are looking at doing an addition. Currently, the elevator kind of sits out on its own. Get to a different view here so you can see it, because it'll be a lot easier to look at in photographs than in plan. Apologize, this is a 130 megabyte file, so it's a big file. So we intend to basically square off the corners of the building. So we would take the existing 4th Street alley and square it off with the existing face of the one-story office portion. So this one-story piece is the offices down at event level. This 2-story space, if you can picture being inside the arena, is actually the concession stand on the north side of the building. There's an overhead rolling grate. So this area with all the branding and the graphics on the current building is where those bathrooms and that large concession stand are on the north side of the building. What we're talking about doing, and you'll see it in a moment, is continuing this wall, this brick wall right here, out to meet up with this brick wall of the arena and turning all of this into 2-story space. So the first floor space would still be team dedicated space, the locker rooms, the dry stack, athletic medicine, and some support spaces, mechanical spaces would occupy the first floor of the building, and then upstairs would be the Muskegon Lumberjacks front office space. So it would be their corporate offices. There would be a player's lounge, which currently also lives down here. And then what we would do is we would create a secure entrance point to the Lumberjacks portion of the building. So it gives them a front door and a street presence, which they don't currently have other than through signage. And it also allows the building to be closed, but for the Lumberjacks to conduct business. For instance, the building's closed right now, so if somebody came to meet with Andrea or a coach or a member of the staff, they would have to find their way through the building somehow, and right now that is not straightforward. If you know what you're doing, there's a way to do it through the Trinity Health Rehab clinic on the far west side of the building. Otherwise, you're probably likely to find people just moving around the building pulling on doors, which is not an ideal situation. or it becomes Carlisle's problem or Rad Dad's problem or somebody else's problem. So this would allow the building to stay closed. It would give the team direct access into their spaces. It would also allow, we would maintain sort of this VIP elevator access from grade level on this side of the building, so that depending on your ticket, you could still come in that way and then get up to the concourse level of the building. So I just wanted to show these pictures for context, because right now this is low-slung one-story space. We are not proposing to eliminate the elevator. We are going to turn it into a two-sided elevator so that from a barrier-free standpoint, we have good access. There's actually 3 levels in this building. I don't know if you're aware of that. There's the concourse level, the sub-concourse level where the current team offices are and the current locker rooms are, and then there's the event level, which is another 2 feet below. So this door is 2 feet higher than the floor in this portion of the building. So there's all these little jogs that somebody using a mobility device can't navigate without taking a very circuitous route at the moment. So let me get into the floor plan to show you what this looks like in plan. And as we get further into this, we do plan to show 3-dimensional views so that the commission and the public can start to understand what this actually looks like from a massing standpoint and what everybody's going to experience if and when this is finally realized. Currently, the building, that low one-story portion of the building ends right here. So we are going to add on to this corner. I mentioned sort of squaring off the corner of the building. The light gray walls, you can see there's a difference in color, hopefully. The light gray are existing walls to remain. The darker gray with the heavy black line is proposed new. So this is the existing building as it stands. We're going to create this lobby with a vestibule. So what would happen is players, people, staff, and people visiting the Lumberjacks would come through this vestibule. Players would enter into their secure locker room suite through a card access door or a biometrically accessed door into their dry change locker room, and then proceed into their stalls. So currently, the Lumberjacks locker room is this piece right here. If and when this goes, it actually moves their locker room closer to the ice. So instead of kind of coming all the way into the back of the building, they're pretty close to the ice, which from a coaching perspective and a game day perspective, if you're shaving minutes off your travel time to and from the ice between periods, that's actually a competitive advantage for a home team. So the other thing it does is it lets us get all of their amenities kind of into one space. They're barrier-free, and they will be in line, if not better, than the rest of the facilities in the league. I would argue that they're probably going to be nicer than the rest of the amenities in the league. There's some mechanical space, renovated team locker room, or a coach's locker room, and then renovated athletic medicine, equipment storage, and then space that is likely to be another locker room that Jake and the arena staff can use depending on what events are going on in the building. I mentioned that we've got 2 levels, so everything on the cursor side of this wall is 2 feet above this side of the wall. So that is going to require us to put a 2-sided elevator in. So we'll use the existing shaft, put a new cab and some new openings so that somebody can come in. If they need to get to the event level or the subconcourse level, they can easily get to the subconcourse level. If they're going all the way up to the Lumberjacks offices or during a game to their assigned seating area, they can make it all the way to the concourse level. And so that is the subconcourse and event level on one sheet, where obviously there's lots of stuff. This is all unexcavated. The other thing that I think is important to note about this is construction phasing in terms of how and when this gets done. So by moving the team locker rooms into this portion of the building, it actually lets the team continue to occupy their existing locker room until this is finished. So it shouldn't interrupt the season, it shouldn't disrupt games and schedule and that kind of thing. Once the team has moved over into the addition renovation, then we can come back and take care of the spaces that are underneath the existing box office and the existing concourse. I'm going to skip to the preferred version. We showed a couple of versions for the concourse level, but I'm going to go to the one that we all preferred. So what this does is, if you can imagine being inside the arena, These are the original stairs coming up from the 4th Street doors. The ticket box office is here. Kim's office is right here, and then all of the controlled liquor storage lives back in this space. That space is kind of a dead space in the arena. It gets used for bar carts and stuff, but it's not really a public space that people use it to exit the arena, but there's not a reason to go back there during a game. And frankly, those doors are a pretty big physical barrier to keep the arena concourse from being activated in a more meaningful and useful way. So we're proposing getting rid of those doors, creating an opportunity where the coaches' offices actually move upstairs with a conference room. We see this as being glass that could be branded and changed seasonally, potentially, kind of like what's on the doors right now, the east doors of the arena right now, where this really starts to give the Lumberjacks a presence. At one point, we talked about putting the team store in this corner, but the reality is you can't see it for most of the arena. Even when we get rid of those doors, you wouldn't be able to see that team store from most of the seats in the arena. So we're saying, okay, we're going to do an addition. This is concourse level, so looking out towards Shoreline Drive. What if we do the team store right here, and we start to add some glass onto the concourse, make it a destination where you get people in, they can buy merchandise, but they can also then hang out and see everything that's going on outside the building. That's kind of a novel idea in an arena. Most of the time we're trying to make them dark and control the light, but if we can make this an amenity that during the season works as a team store, it also provides some flexibility to do some other interesting stuff when it's not being used as a team store. So we think this will really start to help activate the concourse. It also frees up a bunch of real estate in the concourse for additional vendors or fan amenity activities. And right now your concourse is pretty pinched in terms of being able to set up vendor booths for trade shows and that kind of thing. I think in terms of how this building could start to be used in concert with the convention center and really generate some additional space and amenities for the city to sell and rent and really make it, it really opens up a lot of possibilities for the city to start using this building more holistically. So I kind of jumped over there because this is the piece that is pretty exciting about the concourse. The team offices would move from their current location downstairs up here. The players' lounge would be up here, and again, we're kind of working through some of the access control and administrative control kind of things that we need to work through. This was a first take. Andrea just saw this plan today. But it does start to give the team an identity both outside the building and inside the building, and it really starts to open up space for the city inside the building. One thing I did not mention downstairs is currently the existing team offices, and they're a little bit off this plan, so we'll do another plan for the next time we're in front of you to show the bigger context. There are 2 stairs. So I mentioned there's all these different levels. The 4th Street doors are at level 92. The current offices are at level 90. So there's 24 inches of vertical travel that are via stairs to get from those 4th Street doors down to those offices. By removing Jake's current office door and making it part of that bigger office suite, we actually have enough room to put a barrier-free ramp down in place of those stairs. Right now the door is preventing a ramp, but by moving that door, it's a pretty simple thing to do. We can actually make this entire building, from a circulation standpoint, barrier-free. The team is committed to helping take care of that as part of their project, to say, hey, we know this is a problem, it's a simple problem to fix, and we're willing to help the city do it. So we will end up including a ramp as part of that project so that people can get in and out off the 4th Street doors. They don't have to kind of go through all these non-public spaces, crossing Zamboni Pass and Forklift Pass and all these places we don't generally want the general public in an arena just walking around or circulating through. It makes it a lot better from a security standpoint and from a safety standpoint. That's kind of the 10,000 foot view. As I mentioned, we'll be prepared to show some 3D and that kind of stuff at a later date, but we like to get sort of the big moves in place prior to getting too far down the line. And certainly since the project hasn't been approved yet, we want to make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us tonight and presenting. And I really do appreciate the emphasis on the enhancements to accessibility. It was an issue that I've heard from a number of different users of our arena about accessibility and navigating mobility challenges. So I really appreciate those aspects of it, as well as the other improvements you're making to our arena. Commissioners, do you have questions or comments at this time?
I guess
Mr. Manager.
just if there's no specific questions, Andrea or Jake, if you wanted to join up here too, just I guess from a process standpoint on where we're at, as Andrea noted, John Schreier and I are working through with the Jacks on what that amendment to the lease would look like. We're anticipating that will be coming not tomorrow night, but at the next meeting. That'll just give us time to kind of work through some questions we have back and forth. Andrea and I have talked through those, so I'm not anticipating any major hurdles on that on the agreement side of things. So, but yes, and I believe you kind of want to give an update on what you're thinking on your timeline is with that in mind on our next meeting, which would be the consideration. You don't have to.
By timeline, you mean
like
when
between,
we'd like these offices to be completed?
No, kind of like you're thinking on how you would go through to get proposals and when.
Oh,
like
yes.
that one, yes.
Thank you. That's
yes.
a great point.
Yeah.
And actually, we worked in conjunction with Spark 43 and coalition companies to secure that deadline. We would like to issue an RFQ on May 10th, which would allow us to just make sure that we're considering Muskegon-based companies as well. So we would issue the RFQ, the RFP, and we would have construction management firm on staff by June 12th. That would allow us time to be able to interview, ask questions. Honestly, John would probably be better suited to answer any questions as it relates to that, but we are taking this seriously, even though that they are private funds. We really would like to make sure that we're hosting it in a public forum, right? Making sure that we're allowing for your processes and what we are looking to do, because it is a government building. Fair enough?
I think that sums it up really well. I think one of the goals is to get the team into their locker room spaces by Q1 of next year, which is doable. But if we start losing a week here or 9 days there, it starts to become very difficult. So Andrea's point about looking for blessing to go ahead and issue the RFQ for construction management companies tomorrow, that with a caveat in that document that says, hey, this project is not approved. And they're, hopefully it is, but if on the off chance it's not, we're not making any express guarantees that you're going to get to do a construction project. But we do want to consider Muskegon-based companies. We do want to interview a broad spectrum of companies to ensure that both the Lumberjacks and the city are getting the best value in terms of the team and the quality and the longevity of the building. So giving ourselves basically a month to go through a qualifications process, then a proposal process, and interview. We want to make sure that we really have the right team in place to go forward. And then from our standpoint on the design side, we really want that partner in place as soon as possible, because they bring so much value to the design process to say, hey, steel's really long lead time, let's do precast. Like architecturally, it might not change anything, but if we can deliver better value and the better quality over time, that's what the process is set up to do. But if we have to wait 3 weeks, 2 weeks to do that, it just starts pushing the timeline further and further out.
But I appreciate your recognition of that caveat and sharing that in your RFQ that it is not a done deal. It still is going to require formal approval by the commission. And this has come to a prior commission meeting just to share your concept, and there weren't any red flags thrown on the turf by commissioners, and I'm not hearing any concerns or misgivings expressed this evening.
You mean throw it on the ice?
But any red flags thrown on the ice. Yeah, it was better analogy. That there's a reasonable likelihood that we'll find a way forward. But Vice Mayor German.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Just a question about actually a couple of questions. The supporting medical space, what is that going to be like? Could you just kind of give us ideal of what that may look like? Is that going to be like staff from a hospital or just like sports medicine or is all that type of stuff like that?
Yeah, so the athletic medicine space currently exists. It's kind of shoehorned into this little square right here. And so what happens when you get to this level of athlete is they are treating injuries, they're doing rehabilitation work, they're doing pre-practice work. People are getting their wrists taped. It is a certified athletic trainer who is a staff member for the team who is providing day-to-day care for the athletes, whether they're hurt or not. So it might be that like somebody they want to ice down their legs after a skate, and so they come there and they can get bags of ice. We're seeing a big push in athletic architecture right now to whole body nutrition and wellness. I mean, for a long time it was like, hey, go pound weights, and if your head's not straight, suck it up, don't talk about it. But we're spending a lot of time talking about recovery, so how we're taking care of our bodies after games and practices. We're talking about mental health care, we're talking about nutrition. So this is a space where kids, at least in a first line caregiver, are getting all of that kind of care from a certified staff member. It's not a space where if there is a major accident on the ice, kids are not coming here. They're going to go straight to get triage care somewhere else. But it is a really critical space for the team in terms of taking care of their athletes and ensuring that they can sustain a hockey season. I don't know if you know this, but hockey and gymnastics are the 2 longest competition seasons of any sport in the world. Hockey starts in September and it goes till June, which is just insane. It is a really long season. And so getting kids healthy after they've been hurt, taking care of them, that's what that space is really about.
Most modern facilities and premier programs too can facilitate like 8 to 12 athletes at a time for numerous things, whether it's tape or stim or whatever. An athlete at a time, so it really delays and prolongs the process of returning to ice or preparing for ice, practices and games. So that would just increase the space for Ian, who's their therapist, to work on the athletes.
We do partner with Trinity Health in that Trinity Health Sports Performance space that's adjacent to the arena right there. But in terms of this specific space, we wouldn't have any affiliation with a hospital in that location.
Yeah, thank you. And just one last question. You mentioned local workers, and when you talk about local workers, are you considering minority contractors or fair equal opportunities for all workers to participate in, bidding on jobs and stuff like that?
Yeah, and I'm going to defer a little bit to Jeff about the specifics of the RFP because Jeff with Coalition Companies is writing it. But that is a commitment we have on all of our projects is to consider local minority-owned businesses. I don't know if you have, I'm assuming you've got specific language in the RFP.
Jeff Salowitz with Coalition Companies. It's good to see you again.
Yep.
Right now, the RFQ is really just to vet and make sure that the general contractors and construction managers could hit a timeline and meet the requirements that we're going to. Are they bondable? Are they able to meet a schedule that is aggressive, right, for Q1? With that, we have not established our minority, we'll say, goals on this project, but that's something that I always try and build in and try and be creative about to actually meet not just a check the box percentage, it's how do we actually do this in a way that's meaningful for the community we're working in. So I know we did some of that with the convention center, that was a little bit unique, different than the norm. Happy to bring that in to actually meet some goals here as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I definitely would like to see that, and that's real essential that we make sure that we're inclusive, equitable. When we talk about bidding jobs and being partners with, local, contractors from all different backgrounds. Yep.
If you have specific suggestions that you would like to see, I'd be happy to talk to you offline about.
Oh, that'd be fine. Great. Thank you.
And speaking of purchasing policy or practices, I was wondering, because we have our own purchasing policy that governs, and one of the things that's part of that is when we do RFQs or RFPs, that qualifying bidders, we incent local. And so if you are the qualifying bidder and you are based in the city, but you're not the lowest qualified bidder by cost, but you're within a 2% differential, it goes to you in the city. And if you're a county but not in the city, there's a 1% differential. Are you planning on incorporating that or in your approach to letting of the contracts for this?
We do need to discuss that because there is it's a private partnership and public partnership discussion right now. So we haven't set those out, but that is something that we did specifically in the convention center. We worked with the county on establishing what those goals were and coming up with that unique metric to really drive the local percentage of labor, whether that was individuals that worked on it or whether it was ownership by company. How do we capture that? How do we look at that to actually, again, invest back into Muskegon as a local, municipal, county, et cetera? So,
If I may, just as the lumberjacks are financing this, that is something that we would absolutely be open to.
Okay, thank you.
We would like to keep the work here if we can.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, more we can keep the money circulating in our community,
Yes.
the more it multiplies, it's more and more businesses. So we appreciate that. Couple other questions to wrap up. One of which I heard you talking about the expansion of storage they're going to be accommodating. Is that storage solely for lumberjacks? Is it storage that'd be available for others? Does that free up more storage elsewhere, or
Yeah.
Much needed space for arena stuff. We would like to consolidate the shipping containers across the street that aren't very friendly to the eye. But we just have no space for that now. So with the Thayer Street project wrapping up, relocating our turf and our subfloor to go in there, and then hopefully consolidating to only utilize 1 or 2 shipping containers. But a lot of this space that we'll recapture, we can take and push back into the physical.
okay?
Be moving some of the locations that the city has gracefully allowed us to use over the course of the years. We'll be giving those back to the arena with this project.
Okay, nice. And then ballpark. Well, I'll wait to ask my ballpark question. Commissioner Emmer, you had something to ask?
Yes. I don't know who would this be directed at. What do you see as the end result or the purpose of? I know that it's going to be adding square footage, but how will this help the lumberjacks, and in turn, the city of Muskegon and our arena?
Yeah, I'd love to take that if I can. Jake and I have worked really closely on this project and making sure that it doesn't only give us what the lumberjacks are needing. I think I'm going to call it a need rather than a want, because I think we're at that point. But how can it benefit the city, and how can it improve? Because right now, I think a majority of the renovations that have happened at the arena, while they have proven to be worthwhile, I think they've been short-sighted and not taking in a 10 to 15 year plan. While working with Jake, we've been able to access plans that maybe previously didn't exist, create like virtual tours of the arena that also previously didn't exist, giving resources back into the city's hands and also allowing for the ability to plan further out, right? It's great that we're asking for the 10 years for the lumberjacks added on in addition to our lease, because we want to finance this. But the truth of the matter is that it's now bringing the 60-year-old building, 63-year-old building up to a standard that if for any reason we were ever to leave, you would have no problem finding somebody of equal or greater value to fulfill that space. Because right now, the way that the current building exists is it's difficult, right? We don't have a presence. We have difficulty marketing. We have a hard time getting, patrons that have accessibility issues. It's incredibly difficult for them to get into our offices. So we would like to move our offices to make it easier for them, but also make the old offices that are now going over to the city much more accessible for those patrons as well, which is, I would agree with Mr. Mayor, probably the number one frustration that we hear on that side. Is just it's an old building, things weren't considered that should be considered. And then the storage space is really huge. We do always want to make sure that we're analyzing, is this going to benefit us, but in partnership, how can we make this also benefit the city? And I think John spoke earlier about additional vendor space. I'm not sure that a lot of people are aware, but there actually was a contract that was lost because the arena couldn't, maybe you could speak a little bit more to this, but.
It just, this year, the hunting and fishing expo that was previously held at the Deltaplex, consulted with myself and Katie from the convention center, trying to use both facilities unilaterally, and we just didn't have the concourse space, we didn't have the floor space. We were short like 75 booths, which with these renovations can open up space on the concourse to allow us to have that to accommodate specifically the expos. Graduations, concerts, it's not going to drastically affect that, but it gives us the unique ability to be creative on our space and have more attention directed towards offices and whatnot. So
I think, I mean, just architecturally speaking, connecting the building with the lake and the rest of the city, I mean, kind of get that connection through Carlisle's, but it's a big black box. Like when they're closed, you can't see your feet when you're walking through that building. So to have that visual connection back to the city and back to the lake, I think really is a pretty cool opportunity that we don't. I mean, you guys have an amenity, free amenity that nobody can see from inside that building. So if you've come for an expo or you've come for a concert or a football game or a graduation, and you're not familiar with the city, you may not realize that that exists in such close proximity. So I think it provides a really cool opportunity to start checking a lot of boxes about sports tourism, other tourism, and again, how do you turn this building that large building and sort of purpose built for one thing, how can you start to look at it to start generating other revenue streams there? And this certainly provides that for the city as well as the team.
Office space for the arena alone is going to open up a large, lots of opportunities because it's going to allow Kyle the ability from recreation to come in and have a space to plan and work in collaboration with the city staff that's at the arena to make sure that maybe more programming is able to be offered. So I think that's probably one of our biggest, we're excited about that because we'd like to see it used more, and we'd like to see it used more by the people that live directly right around it.
Here, here.
Yep.
Thank you. We appreciate you joining us this evening. My final question was like ballpark. What are you expecting this investment to be on the part of the Lumberjacks into the arena?
They've been really kind and haven't shared that number with me yet.
Okay.
We are ballparking trying to stay around the $2 million figure.
You're looking at a $2 million investment into our arena, and you're asking for the option for 2 5-year renewals for an extra 10 years on your lease. Well, we're not ready to vote on this. It's going to be coming back to us in the future, but I just wanted to express my appreciation and gratitude to the Lumberjacks for your continued investment in our city and our community. You're choosing to grow with us, and it's been wonderful to see your organization transform over time. And it's great that you're continuing to be in that leadership position, because I know that there's been a change of ownership of the organization not too long ago, and you continue to head that organization. So it's in good hands, and I know it's one of the best USHL organizations in the country as well. And so this is just a reinforcement of your organization's commitment to our arena and to our city, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Emery?
Did.
Okay, Commissioner Emery, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay. How do you see this? Will this help the marketing, the vision of Lumberjacks as far as, I mean, I know that they're a great asset to our arena, but will this help you to market them more?
Yeah, absolutely. Allowing our staff the ability to be found is probably the number one way I can share that that's going to make a huge difference. We are also going to be, again, as he's showing right here, we do want the team store to be front and center right next to concessions. Strategically, that is on purpose, right? Not only will that give visibility back to the risers, the Ironmen, and the lumberjacks, but it also is going to give visibility to concessions, which is a moneymaker for the city inside of that arena. So I think I roundabout answered your question. I'm really grateful for the questions that you're asking. But yeah, absolutely. I think that it opens up a lot of opportunities. I mean, just think about how many people are on Shoreline Drive alone. You know, and the parking space that's located across the street, we now have visibility to a new side of the city that we don't currently have visibility to. Yeah.
I think this yellow box I'm drawing, I mean, the ability to take that space and activate it during a game is endless. I mean, there are endless opportunities. We've been throwing out some fan experience ideas that could happen during hockey games that are mobile enough that they can very quickly back away to support an event Jake might bring in.
Proposed team store as well isn't specific to the lumberjacks, so the Ironmen and the risers would be represented in that space as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery. Any final thoughts or questions before moving on? All right. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we look forward
having
to
us.
your return in the not too distant future. All right. Take care. Be well and
Thank
enjoy
you.
your evening. All right. So before I move on to the flock policy, I do see a couple members from Muskegon Public Schools. Are you here with regard to the school resource officer item? All right.
It's they're all the chief's items, so it's
So they're all the chief's items. So Chief, are you okay with me moving school resource officer up next, so that our visiting guests don't necessarily have to stick through?
That is fine with me.
All right, then we're going to rearrange a little bit, and we're going to have school resource officer from Muskegon Middle School, public safety.
We had somebody from Flock that was going to be on a Zoom. We'll just let her know that'll be a little bit longer. So, the middle school, we were approached, or I was approached. When I first got here about this, about having a SRO in our middle school resource officer. The school has secured a grant through, but they secured a nice grant to the state of Michigan. Funding for a school resource officer, and our gap is our middle school. I think the costs will be split between us and the school, up to, I think it's around $54,000, which would be right around ballpark to fund an officer with a salary and of that. I think it's a win-win. Our school resource officer right now, Officer Kayla Foster, has done well, extremely well within the high school. I think if we can start and touching our young people at the middle school, it's going to be a win-win for not only us, but for the community and the school.
I see members from Muskegon Public Schools. I don't know if you would, Dr. Hammond, or Principal Loudermill, if either one of you would like to come up and share your name and your organization, and anything to add on this item.
Sure. This Jennifer Hammond, the curriculum director. The grant that we have secured is for 3 years, and we just need to have someone in place. I do really want to give Officer kudos for being there last week. She was amazing. We appreciate her including our students and our staff at all times, and she is a great asset to us. And so we want the same for our middle school. And I am Lakeisha Loudermill, the principal at Muskegon. And I think it will be a wonderful opportunity to build positive relationships between our students.
Nice thing. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our MPS representatives? No? All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Hammond. Thank you, Principal Loudermill. Appreciate you joining us this evening, and appreciate all you do to educate our youth in the city. Chief Kozel, is there anything else that you wish to add on this item at this time?
No, there's a small contract that we need to sign with the schools that have to be signed by yourself and the superintendent at some point, so I don't think there needs to be necessarily a motion, but I know we don't do that tonight, but just the supportive mission for the upcoming school.
So are you looking for tonight at least some level of consensus of support, or at least no heartburn or objections, so that our finance department can act accordingly in incorporating this into our next fiscal year budget and future, because it sounds like it'd be at least a 3-year program.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Chief Kozel? And do you have, outside of questions, do you have any, concerns or objections to moving this forward? Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Johnson. Chief Kozel, thank you for the update. Could you just give us a ideal of what the operations of this officer does within that setting of a school setting?
So, one thing that sometimes there's confusion is what an officer does at a school. An officer at school does not enforce school policy. An individual in the school can't come up to the officer and say, hey, that person's supposed to be in a class, and an officer's supposed to go up and make certain that person gets in class. Our school resource officer is there to make certain or assist if there's anything that rises to the level of a law violation. And also, the biggest thing that they do every day, 99% of the time, is be that person that they can talk to be that person, that mentor for the young people that are in schools. Our school resource officers also attend all our school functions, are there as almost like a security detail. So it's a big benefit.
Thank you.
Commissioner St. Clair.
Thanks. I too spend quite a lot of time at the school functions. For those that don't know, my husband's on the school board, so we're in there quite a lot. And I will say that while I do see Officer Foster in there quite frequently, I would not say that she comes across as a security detail. She is clearly part of the community. I was speaking to the city manager earlier today about how well she has integrated. It does not come across as she is there to police the students. It comes across that she is there to be part of the community and a support. And I think that's a really important distinction. I do know that she is there in the capacity as a police officer, and I don't want to minimize that. But my experience with observing her, and I've been around the school a lot, and I've seen a lot of different school resource officers over the years. My observation is that while they are there in their official capacity, they're also there as part of the community to be a helper. And I do really appreciate that. But I specifically have noticed Officer Foster just really doing a great job.
Appreciate that. The times that I've been there at school with her, everybody's always saying hi to her. All the kids are always saying hi to her.
They like her.
Thank you for sharing those insights, Commissioner St. Clair. Any other comments or questions, commissioners? No? All right. Well, thank you, Chief Kozel.
I will get
But don't
something
go
together
anywhere,
and get it
'cause-
back to you for the upcoming school year. So
All right, sounds good. Next up, we have flock policy. And you've got someone that's going to be joining us by Zoom
correct.
as well.
Somebody from Flock. These are questions of them that we might not be able to answer. We thought it'd be beneficial if she could be here. I also have Captain Bohorsky, who has headed up this project. He'll be also with me. Probably be able to answer a lot more of the questions than I would be able to.
Okay.
I'd like to start it off. It says flock policy. But if you recall, there was a question that you asked of me a couple of commission meetings ago. I think it had to do with what are we doing or what can we do to stop gun violence. A couple things that we're going to hear about tonight, and one of them is going to be the flock safety system. The other one's going to be the canine that can help us on the operational end. I talked a lot about at that meeting about the things that we try to do on the front end, but we have to be able to solve these things quickly. Okay? Our last unfortunate tragic incident last week, we spent over 12 hours trying to find one car. I believe that with this system, we would have had that car, at least knew where it was and where it was going within half hour to an hour. We'd have been able to figure that out. It would have saved our resources, because we wound up having Michigan State Police, a helicopter, their technical team here, Ottawa County was here. We had a large contingent trying to find that one vehicle that was involved in that. So this is going to be a big benefit to us going further. It's also been a great benefit for a lot of the communities throughout Michigan that already utilize it, solving their crimes. So you had a chance, hopefully you had a chance to digest what you had in your packet. I know there's going to be questions of myself. I welcome Captain Bohorsky. Me? Oh, here we are.
Yeah. I was wondering where you were.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, I just decided I wanted to update, so I'll keep talking. It's going to be there.
A little bit, I'll continue. Our FLAC system is an automated license plate reader. And that's really all it does. It doesn't do anything about humans. All we know is that vehicle. That's it. Goes by the camera and takes snapshots of the vehicle as it goes by. As you can see, attached to your packet also is a proposed policy that the captain put together that's very specific about when we can use it. This system is for investigative purposes only. Everything is stored. Every time someone logs on, we would know. So if Tim Kozel suddenly wants to nefariously look in the system because I see a car go by and I see somebody in it, right? And I log onto that system, we will know. We have to do it for investigative purposes only. And anybody outside of the people that are authorized to use it would have to get permission from the authorized users. Hopefully that's where this. We also are able to partner with other communities. As you all know, we aren't the only community that has issues with crime. People come to and from Muskegon. People from Muskegon go elsewhere. As with that incident last week, they went outside the county down into Ottawa County. We'll be able to know if these other communities have flat cameras. As a matter of fact, I believe Holland and Ottawa County are getting a wide swath of flat cameras. We're going to be able to know if they're there also. One of the incidents that Captain Bohorsky told me about was we had probably a couple months ago, we had some issues with thefts, break-ins of our marijuana establishments. The car that was being utilized in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Captain, was the car that had been stolen. If I would have went by one of our cameras prior to the incident, we would have been alerted immediately. We would have known that this car was in the area. I'm not saying we would have prevented it, but there was a large amount of theft or cost that was attributed to both.
The vehicle was stolen in Grand Rapids. That particular vehicle was used between 8 and 12 times to break into marijuana dispensaries and marijuana establishments. We were probably the last two or three of the string of B&Es that vehicle was associated with. Grand Rapids area has a FLAC system. I'm assuming, I don't know for sure because I don't have access to their system right now, but I'm assuming that as a stolen vehicle that was probably entered into their system as a stolen vehicle flagged. If we had the system in Muskegon County, once that vehicle passed one of our cameras, we would have been alerted to it. The alert was already pushed out that it was a stolen vehicle from Grand Rapids in Muskegon after midnight, at 1 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, something we probably want to go. That particular incident, that was over $10,000 worth of property crime from.
Also that we're planning on doing is mimicking other cities where they have a transparency page right on their webpage, which will show, I believe, up to the minute what's going on with our FLAC system, the hits that are on there, what we have recovered. Everything will be there for anybody to look at every single day, so we can be as transparent as possible about what we're doing with our actual FLAC system.
In that vein, which I really like the notion of a transparency page, but I'm curious, when you said everything will be visible there, what do you mean by everything? Like all photos and video being taken will be available there, or you're just talking
It's
about
data.
When it's accessed, how it's accessed, what it's used for, like that kind of thing?
So I'm not sure what Laura Ann from FLAC has. She may have a slide that shows, but essentially what it's going to show you is the number of searches that our agency has done, the number of vehicles that we've entered into the system, the number of vehicles that have been captured by the system.
Okay.
And it can be there's several different parameters that you can kind of tailor make it. So some agencies, it's very basic on what they're showing. Other agencies, they're very open. They're very transparent about everything they're showing. That's kind of how we're leaning. Well, the other agencies that are looking at our stuff. So part of the flock system, which, like the chief said, if Grand Rapids has it and we share information via the system, we'll be able to see that Grand Rapids is accessing our system and using our information.
Okay, so it's process-related data that's going to be made
Yes.
available.
There's no-
not imagery.
Okay. No imagery is shown publicly.
Okay.
We own all the images. We control all the images. They're stored. You see in the policy. I think it's
Okay. Before we open up to the flock safety representative, commissioners, do you have questions right now at this time for Chief Kozel or for Captain Bohorsky? Commissioner Emery.
I do. I was going to ask how many, but I see quantity of 10. So where would they be? I mean, 10 doesn't seem like very many for as many corners as we have in this city.
You're correct. I think it's excellent.
So is that just a beginning?
Yes.
Okay.
Start off with 10. We'd like to put them at strategic areas that are, I'll say, are coming and are going exits and are goings, like Lincoln and Getty. We tend to find that a lot of our individuals will come out of our city that way and it will come into our city that way. That's just one of them. We don't want to. We want to put it as a large enough area that we can catch vehicles coming in.
So
start off with.
the major intersections is what
that's how we'd like to start.
That's how we like to start. Yes.
Okay, so it won't look at traffic violators at all.
Doesn't
So
show.
if I go through a stop sign, you're not going to see that I went through a stop sign. Okay,
Unless you're
you were
driving a
there.
stolen vehicle.
Okay.
So,
What?
Unless you're driving a stolen vehicle that they're looking
Oh,
for.
right.
Running that stop sign and it's stolen.
Yeah, yeah.
So full disclosure, so as you're passing that intersection, it's going to snap a photo, and the system doesn't know what color the light is. So it's possible that as you're passing the intersection, it's snapping the photo of your vehicle. The light, it could catch you in a violation, but that's not our intended use of this
Okay.
system. We're not going to use it for traffic enforcement. We're using it as an investigative tool.
So we can assure our citizens that it's not Big Brother watching.
Not at all. We're
Okay.
only going to do it when we need to look for
Yeah.
when we're in an investigation.
Yeah, such as in our awful incident that happened in our city last week.
Yes.
So, yes. Thank you.
Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Okay, now, Chief Kozel, you said this is just targeted, when you're using the system, it's going to be targeted towards vehicles that, it'll target in on the plates. Okay.
Correct. If we, for instance, are looking for a vehicle that's involved in a crime and it's a blue Ford pickup, we can type in a blue Ford pickup.
Okay.
We can type in a white sedan with a bumper sticker. It can tell us those type of vehicles that go by. Doesn't have to necessarily be specifically.
Okay, got you. Okay, that was my question, because I was going to ask, what if the vehicle doesn't have a plate?
Or it has a plate and it gets changed. We
Yeah.
can put in that type of information to search for. We can also put it in preemptively to say, hey, alert me when this vehicle comes by.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, well, thank
This is
you. That's
exactly what
good.
we would have done with this last homicide.
Yeah.
We knew what the suspect vehicle looked like. We had video of it, but we just had to find it.
Yeah.
So the amount of man hours and the amount of people that took us to actually find that vehicle, it took, in excess of 10 hours to find that vehicle. And we know that vehicle in that incident was probably mobile, moving around the city. Had that passed a camera, we would have been alerted immediately.
So we're looking at it like a GPS tracking system that kind of.
Not really anything GPS. It just if it would have passed one of our cameras on one of our target intersections. So say that vehicle on the move after the homicide had passed Laketon and Getty, and as it passes, we don't necessarily know the license plate of the vehicle, but it was a distinct vehicle. When we put the characteristics of that vehicle into the system, it would have alerted our command that, hey, a vehicle matching the description you just entered has passed this camera. That I can put officers in that area. Now I've targeted down where that vehicle was last.
Okay.
It's really, it's kind of a force multiplier where Now, instead of having officers monitoring every single intersection, these hot intersections where there's a lot of traffic, we can monitor them and have kind of eyes there watching things that we need.
Okay.
One
Thank
thing, he used the phrase force multiplier. Can you imagine in these incidents when we have a serious crime, we have to send officers out. When we had the homicide a month ago, I was out there looking around to see for Ring cameras, so looking for cameras on businesses. Talk to the homeowner or the business owner if we can access their system. So we have 5, 6 officers out there looking for that. Well, now we only need 1 to look, hopefully, at our block cameras as we grow. Those 5 other 4 officers can be doing other work. It's going to cut down on our investigative time.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Vice Mayor German.
Yeah.
Any other questions at this time? Mr. Manager.
If none of the commissioners do it. Chief, can you maybe talk about our data handling policies in general? Because there are certain criteria that police officers or members of the public safety department have to go through to access state databases and things like that, and how this is similar to that. There's already a certain level of control there, or Captain Bors?
Yep, so by policy, we would mandate who can access the system. The thing that's kind of significant about Flock, which is different than some of the other systems, it doesn't have any connection to the state of Michigan. There's no connection to the Secretary of State's office, right? So we're not running any of these vehicles, and Flock isn't running any of these vehicles on lead, which would give us the owner information. It's just capturing a still photo. So in order to get the data of who that vehicle belongs to, it has to be run through the state system, and that's going to be done by a sworn police officer, essentially. They're one of our clerical personnel that have access to the system. So it's, and then we're obviously governed by our information technology policy throughout the city, and the police department are pretty strict about what our guys are looking up and what access they can. The good thing about Flock also is that I believe there's an audit trail in it, so we can see what.
And kind of like our lean. Oh, sorry. Okay. And kind of like the lean policy, like you can't look it up to say look up a strange family member or a if there's an ex involved or something like that. Just like with the lean policy, you can't use that information for things like that.
I mean, if you did, that'd be a pretty big violation of our department policy.
Right.
You'd have. So. I can't say that we couldn't prohibit somebody that has access from the system from doing that, but if the consequences would be severe.
Right. Built within the policy is an audit that we will do periodically. Certain that we don't have that. Same aspect where it's not going to be running the plates. If that plate, ABC 1 through 3 is a stolen vehicle, it will let us know. So that's the only thing that will hit out. Or if we say we want ABC 1, 2, 3.
Good questions. In that vein, the policy in our packet refers to. Well, where did I see that? Basically, it referred back to policy that exists, but the policy wasn't spelled out here, so I'm just wondering if you might be able to elaborate on that. It was.
The records retention.
Yes, pertaining to records retention. Yeah, record retention policy. Could you elaborate on that? Yeah. All stored ALPR data should be retained in accordance with the established records retention schedule.
So where that would apply is if an image captured from the system is used for criminal investigation. If we say we enter a stolen vehicle into the system, we locate that stolen vehicle by way of the system, so that vehicle is captured. That picture of that vehicle driving down Lake Denighetti that has alerted us is now potentially evidence. Right. So that will not be subject to the 30-day retention schedule by Flock. We'll pull that off the system. That'll go into our evidence file, and we'll keep that for the criminal court proceeding. And then it would be subject to the records retention once criminal law activates. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that right? I think so. Just the random everyday people driving to the intersection where the camera's capturing 30 days, that stays in the system and falls off. But anything beyond that, that becomes a criminal investigation, that's going to be pulled off, and that'll be stored separately, right, as evidence.
So we'll archive that.
I don't believe that the system will do that itself. We'll probably have to. So that might be a question for Laura, because to be honest with you, I really haven't had my hands on this thing. I would assume that we can pull that off and save that digitally for court.
Okay.
And once the court process is completed, it would be subject to record retention, and we would destroy it as no longer needed.
Okay. So I know some other municipalities that have used Flock have shortened up that window, from 30 days to being 72 hours, or even, within 5 minutes and whatnot. Like, have you guys given consideration to shortening it up? Do you have concerns if you were to shorten it up? Like, what is a reasonable balance between serving our law enforcement needs and public safety needs while being sensitive to people's privacy concerns?
I could comment real quick on that. I think just in the small period of time, 8-9 months that I've been here, and some of the cases that we've been involved with investigations with our shots fired and our gun violence, this isn't a one-day event. It isn't a 72-hour event, and I hate to say it, it's usually the same one person or 2 or 3 people. Having that availability, we believe, for a little bit longer period of time will assist us in those investigations. We have 2 individuals that are in custody right now that were responsible for we're responsible for a lot of shootings and armed robberies, but it's spanned a couple weeks. We would want that information for those couple. We would hate to lose it and not be able to put that person at a prior crime once we knew it here today. I think 30 days is a pretty good window.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have
Yes,
our Zoom
I do.
participant available?
Yes.
All right. Can you or she introduce herself and the organization?
Ooh. Our sound guy went back in there. I went back in there. Now on your head, if you can hear me. Hold on. Yeah. No. Yeah, no, we can hear you, Laura. Hold on just a second. We're gonna.
Is that a yes or no?
Just a second. Yeah, yes, hold on. I got it there, right there. She's right there. Then I'm gonna do that, yep, but then I was getting the sound.
Yep, but you gotta do that for otherwise.
Yeah, but that's when the feedback came. Laura, can you speak, Laura? Can you hear me?
If I may, sir, the proposal that you have in front of you is actually for the initial first 2 years of this. That's what we're proposing. Anything over, of course, that 1 year is where we have to get not only approval and consensus on the commission, but for that 2 year. It's technically not a contract. We're just hoping to start off and get the ball rolling for 2 years.
So it is not a 2-year contract, but it's a 2-year financial commitment
Right.
on our part.
Correct.
Okay. And so we are leasing the equipment. We're not acquiring the equipment.
No,
Or is that
we would own it.
we will own the equipment, but there's an ongoing lease arrangement for
So
the
the
software and access to the
their
database?
system and 4G.
Okay.
Laura, can you hear us? Okay.
And you have room in your existing, so we're gonna be funding this out of the current fiscal year, well, the first year, or is it gonna be out of the next fiscal year? So you're building this into the
Currently have a
upcoming-
placeholder, depending upon my visit with the city manager. Currently have a placeholder for the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Questions that come through, and if you
Hold
want
on.
to hear me, I'm happy to do it that way.
There we go. This.
Wait.
She should be able to hear on the speaker now. But then monitor microphone. I don't know why she can't hear us though. But her voice should be in the speaker now.
Okay.
on chat.
Yeah.
Just chat.
Laura, can you try again? Mm-mm. Permission needed.
Well, we're still working through the Zoom.
All right.
Oh,
What about now?
There we go.
Typing good, I guess.
I got a yes in the chat.
We can hear you.
All right. Captain Bohorsky, can you give me a nod if we're good to move ahead?
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, so folks, it looks like we'll communicate through chat and maybe through the Facebook feed. I think Captain and Bohorsky and Chief are answering many of the questions, and so if there are specific questions that you all have for me, I'm happy to talk in more detail about our leasing agreement. One thing that I would like to highlight for you all as you're having this conversation is that about 70% of crimes are actually committed with a vehicle. And so while your department is describing the specific things that they'll be able to do with the system, it really will make a significant impact on the crime that you all are experiencing. I think another important piece of the conversation is that, like they've already described, it's just the picture of the back of the car with our vehicle recognition technology. And it is really important for us to balance the need to have some investigative data so that we can keep our community safe and not so much data that we present more risks for the community. And at Flock Safety, we've tried to do that by prioritizing our customers' privacy and focusing on that rear vehicle image as an investigative resource for you all. One thing that hasn't come up in the discussion so far that I'm happy for us to talk about is that you all own your data and your images in a Flock partnership. And that means that you determine who you'll share with, but Flock Safety will never share or sell your data. You guys have total ownership and control over what happens to your images. We also don't connect to any personally identifying information or databases. So Carfax, the Michigan DMV databases, all of those are separate from Flock Safety system. And that provides an additional level of protection so that your law enforcement go into their own law enforcement network databases to do searches of that personal information. Your chief highlighted that audit portal log really well, and we're happy to answer more questions if you guys have any about that. But I'd also love to share maybe a couple of examples where our technology has made a significant difference. You guys, I know, are struggling with some violent crime now, but we've been able to help communities reduce all sorts of crime in their community, from things like property crime, mail theft, mail fraud, to tragic situations like hit and runs, to kidnappings. In Van Buren Township, outside of Detroit, we were able to help that community with a really tragic hit and run incident. A young mother was walking on a service road late at night and was actually hit by a vehicle. And they found some debris at the end of the road from that hit where the woman was murdered. But they didn't have anything else to go on, right? Because it was the middle of the night. Luckily, they had installed Flock Safety's devices, and so they were able to see what the debris matched an image of a vehicle that had hit the individual at a certain timestamp. And so they actually were able to pursue that as a suspect, and the individual confessed. And that's a situation that a lot of times with hit and runs, especially late at night, there's never a resolution for folks, and they were able to provide resolution to her family. In Dearborn, Michigan is another great example of a really tragic kidnapping case that we were able to help solve. A woman out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee was kidnapped and murdered by some individuals that she knew, and the license plate associated with that vehicle that they thought she might have been kidnapped by was actually dinged in Dearborn. And they were able to bring some resolution to her family after apprehending those suspects. So there's all sorts of cases that we can help with, and you never know what your community is going to have to experience. But we try to partner with your law enforcement to get them the real-time information that they need to keep you all safe. Captain Pohorsky and Chief, I know this is a bit unconventional, but I'm happy to stick around to help you guys with questions.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Holland? Nope. All right. I think the three of you have covered it fairly well. And so, what is next steps with regard to this policy then?
The policy itself.
And the acquiring the equipment and leasing and operating it.
Well, knowing that I have, I don't know what the right term is, or a consensus with the city commission that there's support for the system, and it's something that we're able to put into our upcoming fiscal year, then we would move forward with the purchase of that. The policy would be implemented. It would, of course, have the once over by our policy gurus and get it into our accredited system. So that'd be our next steps.
And then I guess I do have a question. Thank you, Chief Goals. I do have a question for Ms. Holland. Ms. Holland, your standard language with regard to retention is that footage is stored for no longer than 30 days in compliance with Flock's records retention policy. In the event a municipality wants to change that in the future, they can at will. Is there that level of customization available then? Or are you locked in, based upon the prevailing language at the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we will abide by all local and state laws regarding retention, right? So if you guys later on decide that you want to decrease that, we will work with your law enforcement to make that modification. If you guys decide to increase it, there is an additional cost associated with that additional data storage. And so that might be something that would need to be an addendum to the contract afterwards, including costs.
Is there, in that regard, if we want to, because there's a ping due to criminal activity have happened and we need to keep it for evidentiary purposes, since we own the data, we can download and archive that data on our own storage devices for part of the judicial process?
Yes, absolutely. That's most of our customers will use their own record management systems, and they will download it into your own network. And then if it's not associated with an investigation, it's never seen and deleted.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions that may have come up, commissioners? No? All right. Well, thank you for joining us via Zoom, Ms. Holland. Appreciate the work that you've been putting into this, Captain Pohorsky, and Chief Kozel for bringing this to our attention. I think it's another tool to be utilized to serve and protect our community. And when you're responding to crime, particularly violent crime, time is of the essence. And so if we can speed things up, although honestly, I think it's an impressive response by you and Muskegon Police Department and our law enforcement partnering agencies in response to the tragedy that happened last week. For you have to have identified the vehicle, found the vehicle, and apprehended suspects within that 10-hour time frame. That is phenomenal work. So I do want to express my appreciation for that work you've done. But if we can speed that up to getting a car located and people apprehended within an hour, 2 hours, time is of the essence. So thank you for the work that you are doing, and thank you for bringing these solutions to our attention so that we can further enhance how we are serving and protecting our community.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Holland, for joining us this evening. Take care and be well. All right, next up we have the canine call, and a little bit of audio feedback. All right. Next up we have the canine policy.
You know what? I just want to comment. It's nice to be able to finally get some podium time because Dan hogs it all the time. So, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
I know this is like a reversal of
Yes.
the last one where it was like DPW, 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 and here we got public safety, public safety,
Yep.
public safety. So,
Yes.
all right.
So we were here once before. We had a lengthy discussion, and one of the things that was brought up was policy. And if you saw in your packet, there is a policy that was drafted. What we did is we looked at several departments that have active canine programs, and we bring it all, put it all together into one, so you could digest. I know there was something that Ms. Gorman that you had asked about as far as how we're going to utilize it out there with our community members. Try to do the best we can to encapsulate what you were asking to say. We're not going to make one preference over the other. The biggest thing we have to realize is with our, just starting out with our canine program is we're working officers still, right? We're still taking our calls, we're still doing what we need to do out there. So, but we know that, and I've always stressed when I'm talking about that, is this is a great thing for our community. We've already been out before, if you've seen during Easter, during the Easter egg hunts, she was out there, and it was very well received, very well received. Everybody, adults and children. So we welcome an opportunity to be able to talk to you further, talk about our policy, and again, try to get some consensus as to the program and getting it started. And another tool, as you just said, sir, with combating what we, issues that we have that arise within our city.
Excellent. Commissioners, any questions for Chief Kozel or Sergeant Bofasil? Bofasil.
You'll get it.
Bofasil.
Sergeant B.
That works.
None?
Well,
Vice Mayor German.
yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sergeant and Chief. It's been a while since we had K9 on the police department here in Muskegon. I remember growing up as a teenager, youth, seeing the Muskegon Police Department with a K9 unit. And we talked about how this K9 will be utilized and basically spilled it out in the request. Crime, drugs, all the things that the K9 unit is capable of doing and what it would be used for. Now, will this dog also be, well, K9, I should say. He probably might be kind of sensitive, so I better address it correctly. When it involves the community, there are protocols. Just say, for instance, if a crowd is out protesting and somehow gets violent, and what is the protocol utilizing a K9 just to kind of keep the peace? Is it on a leash? Always walking freely? How does that work?
I'll tell you that there's something going on, and there's a large crowd that things going on, it starts getting violent. More likely than not, that canine's looking for that car.
Right, there's enough to focus on.
Yeah.
You know, if you had a dog out during that high evolving situation, your focus would have to be on the dog and the people and your coworkers and your safety, the dog's safety. There's just too much going on.
Yeah.
The dog is not an appropriate tool for that incident. Now, obviously, if there's some available, then that tool's there. But just as far as an angry crowd or a disruptive crowd, that's not an appropriate setting for a dog.
Okay, got you. Now, what if it encounters other dogs? I see a lot of dogs now, more common dogs, pit bulls, Rottweilers and stuff like that, going into a setting like that, a raid or something like that. Are that trained to combat with those animals, or?
You would want to keep your dog as safe as possible. Obviously, we spend hours and hours and hours, tons of hours, putting work into our dogs, our teams. The last thing that you want to do is have your dog get an injury just from the encounter with another dog. So you keep your dog safe. socialize or to interact. And if there was an instance where a dog was resting on your dog, you would do what you could to get your dog. It wouldn't be a situation where you would expect your dog to coexist around other dogs.
Okay. Just curious. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I drove him, he would ignore all of their dogs. He's
Yeah.
very good about that. But dogs are dogs, right?
One thing operationally, if she was out doing a track after a violent felon, and we were starting to go through backyards trying to find this violent felon, she's not going to do it alone. They want to have someone there with her to protect her against a person, a canine, cow. I don't know, right? You just don't know what's going to come out of nowhere. We want to have that officer there because she is so focused. So she understands we might be close. We might be close to the suspect.
Just one more question.
Yes, Vice Mayor Jones.
Sorry, could you just kind of explain to the public about, I guess, your training and how this would be a benefit to the community from your field in law enforcement and your expertise in working with a K-9?
Absolutely. I've been, just for a little bit of history, I've been working with dogs on the professional side since 2009. Several bomb dogs. I've worked patrol and explosives dog in the law enforcement setting. How a dog would benefit the community. Explosives, narcotics, doesn't matter. You can find things that people can't find. You can find things faster than people. So it takes less officers to do more work. Leaving officers on the road. Leaving officers on the road to, come here, answer other calls for service and to help. There's public relations events. Builds relationships between you, the youth, adults. It's amazing what a dog in the public will bring out as far as in the community. Even people that you think would be super they now feel like they have a common ground to talk to you about. So it bridges that gap. Yes, my certifications. So we certify through a nationally recognized organization called the United States Police Canine Association. The detection portion of it, so sniffing for things, bomb dogs have to go through odor recognition test, which is an ATF test. They have to sniff parcels, so it would be like mail packages or luggage. They have to sniff rooms, they have to sniff vehicles, tracking. You have to show that you're proficient in tracking, locate articles along the track. And then the aggression work all starts with obedience. So control is the number one factor in that. If you cannot control your dog, you don't get to move forward. So without control, you have no aggression at all. For the aggression portion, though, you have it's called a false start. So where you're standing with your dog, you put them in a stay. The person that they really want to bite runs away super fast. The dog has to stay with you and not break to go after. The next one, it's not always in the same order, but the next one could be send the dog for a bite. When the dog's approximately 40 yards away from you, a pretty good distance, running after a running decoy or a person that wants to get hit, you call your dog back to you. So the dog stops what it's doing, comes back to you, doesn't get to bite. Another one, you send the dog bites, you run down the field, you have your dog released, put your dog in a down stay, have that person move away, you perform a search on that person, and the dog stays while you pat them down, move them around, again, showing control that you can perform your tasks that you would need to do on the road with your dog not acting aggressive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor German. Any other questions or comments at this time?
Thank you for coming back for the policy. I think this is exciting, and just reading the policy really helps. I think all of us be able to communicate what you're talking about, but especially to our neighbors to know that this is a resource to them and a safety tool for them, and nothing they should be concerned about, or that any specific event downtown, like you mentioned, is being targeted, and that's why the dog's present. So I really appreciate the follow up on that.
Just so everybody knows too, I've attended quite a few neighborhood meetings. I've seen a few of you there. There's been absolutely nothing negative at all, at least to my face.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Gorman.
And actually surprised that we don't have one sometimes.
Yes,
No.
they think that he's already working, and yeah,
we're in progress.
It's funny.
So I know Commissioner Hood, who is unfortunately could not join us this evening, is very much interested in this policy as well. So if you could kindly, make an extra effort to reach out to him and speak to him about the policy and address any questions or concerns that he may have, so that can be incorporated and addressed going forward.
Most definitely.
All right. Well, appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you, Chief Kozel. Thank you, Sergeant Bo Faisal. And thank you, Nitro.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Chief Kozel is not going anywhere. Another public safety item. We have closing the pier. So
Okay.
if you could speak to what is this item?
What is this item, Chief Kozel? Sometimes, to be frank, we need to make decisions for people. Don't want to go out on the pier when there's waves crashing over and it can throw them out and they could perish, right? State statute allows for us to be able to close a pier if the wind conditions on the Great Lakes attain a magnitude whereby 1/3 of the waves resulting from the conditions cause any public pier, wharf, or retaining wall to be awash. So it's pretty simple. We stand out there, we watch, we see the waves crash over, 1 out of every 3, and we can close it. We then would monitor if now it's safe, then we would be able to open it back up. And I don't know if in the packet it had, this is something that we would put in, and I've talked with Dan about this. This is something that we would put in, and we'd also take out at the end of the year because we don't want to leave it in. Got a copy of a prospective look at, I'm sorry. Apologies. If I may, Coach, just pass that real quick. This is a copy of the gate that we had in Ludington. That we can put in. You have to mark it that violators, can be prosecuted. There is a document that I put together that I have had presented to myself and the city manager and Leanne have talked about. It's a document that the Corps wants us to fill out to get permission to be able to put something on the pier. So we put that together. It's ready to go to them. It'd be minimal cost. I think they're within that. I think I put $1,000 budget. I don't know what it's going to cost to buy a gate like that, but it'd be something that we'd monitor, especially as weather goes. I can tell you that when we had the higher water when I was in Ludington, we had to close it more often. Normally we don't have to close it as much, but this allows us to be able to hopefully keep our citizens and our visitors a lot more safe when they're out enjoying our city.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief Kozel. Yeah, I, for one thing, this is a sensible addition for public protection and safety. We as a city pay for a lease to access and provide the public to access that pier. And so I think that carries a special responsibility that an oversight of that and when people can access that. Because if there's dangerous conditions, then it's sensible to restrict that, and not only for those individuals' safety, but also our public safety personnel, because if something happens, it's our public safety personnel responding and then putting themselves in harm's way. And so I think this is a prudent change in addition. Commissioner Emery.
How tall is this? Do you know?
Effective gate?
Yeah.
I want to say
high
it's 38 inches. I'm not exactly, but it's just, a regular size.
It's not a 6 foot.
Yeah, okay.
No.
So
not at all.
easily to scale, but you're saying that violators.
They could possibly fine with a ticket in their hand.
In my opinion, I've spent lots of time out there at that beach, and on that pier. I think this is a very low cost for the safety of especially visitors to our city who don't know and understand the dangers of the lake. So.
Indeed. Any other comments or questions, Commissioners? Commissioner St. Clair.
I would just concur with Commissioner Emery. I think that it's a very small ask of us that it is obviously a scalable thing, and if people are going to go around it, they're going to go around it. But I think it is incumbent upon us to do what we can to help people make good choices. And if they are not going to, then it's pretty clearly spelled out that they are taking a risk. It's not an accident if they choose to go over the gate. So.
I tell you, up in Ludington, we had 7 tragic drownings, all off the pier. The gate's been installed now for going on 3 seasons. There's been 0. Not saying that's actually going to happen here, but I could say that we have had water emergencies here where we have responded out there, have had tragedies that have happened, and also have almost lost a firefighter on one. As we've commented already before, we don't need that to happen
here, yeah.
because I know our men and women, they're going to go out there and want to save them. So.
Any other comments or questions? Nope. All right. Thank you, Chief Kozel. Another sensible safety measure. Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think that concludes your time with us this evening. All right. Next up, also peer related, we have Muskegon Lighthouse's ownership, and that's being reported out by our David Alexander with the Development Services Division.
Welcome, and actually a community engagement specialist. But we are speaking on behalf of the Development Services in conjunction with DPW and Parks and Recreation. Ann, have you been able to get Jeff on the line? You want me?
I'm going to go call him right now.
Okay. I'll get started. Can you get us up to my slides? They're right at the end of the packet. We were here prior in March, talk about the lighthouse and the opportunity for the city to obtain that. And what we're trying to do is get Jeff Shook, who is the president of the Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy, on the line. He was unable to be here tonight, which is one of the issues that the Conservancy has. He is in Fenton. He is out. He had day opportunity to or responsibility with family today, and he's out right now coaching his son's Little League game over on the east side of the state. So we got him. Why don't I introduce Jeff, and we can see if we can get him up. Jeff, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for taking some time out. I don't know what inning you're in. I hope you're ahead in the game.
We're in the 3rd inning here, and I'm going to be muting on and off.
Okay. Just if you could briefly introduce yourself, introduce your Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy, and make a brief request of what you're asking of the city.
All right, sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Shook, and I'm the president of the Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy. And we've been caring for the Muskegon lighthouses since they were awarded to us through the National Lighthouse Preservation Act of 2000 in 2010. We just we have one lighthouse in or the 2 lighthouses in Muskegon, 1 in Altoona, and as of right now, we are asking that the city consider taking over the care and management of the the lighthouses for future preservation.
Reason for that request, Mr. Shook?
Right now, resource-wise and funding-wise for us, it's not a good fit for us at this point in time, and I'm not sure what else to add to that, but strategically and time needed, etc., we're not able to tackle the full project right now.
Are you able to stay on the line? If we may have some questions for you here at the end.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can mute yourself. Thanks. Next slide. So you can see one of the other brilliant, dramatic ice formations on that pier, on that lighthouse. It's one of the reasons that we have the structural issues that we do, and that they are moving forward, and we'll get to that here in our presentation. Since we were last here, again, in March of 23 here this year.
I'm not hearing anything. If you can hear me, I think I'm muted to the right.
You just want to, there we go, thank you. We've done some further research. We've not done a complete rundown of a complete project with maybe all the details that you want, but I think we're at a position that we as staff are looking for your direction with what we have so far, because the next steps may be long, lengthy, staff intensive, and could cost us some funds from the grant that we've got. Next slide, if we could. Current status is that we, as Jeff had mentioned, both the South Breakwater Wall and the South Pierhead Lighthouses are owned and maintained by his Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy, a nonprofit out of Fenton. The MLC has a lease through 2035 with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and for the use of the breakwall and the pierhead. And then the MLC is not in a position, as he has said, to continue its ownership and stewardship of the Muskegon Lighthouses. And beginning of this year, Jeff reached out to city staff and asked us to explore taking ownership, and that would be obviously ongoing maintenance and stewardship of those historic structures. Next slide. The city of Muskegon, to obtain the lighthouses, would have to go through a process for that transfer. We would need to update the 2010 Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy application to the National Park Service under the National Lighthouse Preservation Act. And that current document is 28 pages long. It has a number of items that, speaking with the National Park Service, we've reached out to their architectural historian with historic preservation partnerships for the Midwest, including 13 states here in the Great Lakes. And of those sections that in that document is in your packet, we would need to entirely redo the preservation and maintenance plan, the use plan, the financial plan, and the management plan. And that regarding use, Dina Sanford, our architectural historian that we would be working with, says that promoting the light through educational opportunities, tours, events, literature, and the webcam would be all options that we could consider, and that we would need to take care of some of those types of ideas or programs as a requirement under the Preservation Act application. So with that, I'm not sure if we have staff time or expertise to do so. There is a architectural firm up in the Upper Peninsula that I believe we could contact to see if that could be done for us. It's a back and forth with the National Park Service, and then also with SHPO, which is a state office for historic preservation. They would also have an element in that process and would be consulted on it. After that, we would then, if the application, again, could be up to, Jeff has suggested, up to a year to complete, we may be able to do it a shorter period of time than that, but then there would be a need for a renewal of the current lease that the owner of the lighthouse would have with the Army Corps of Engineers. And that would be a 25-year lease that we were talking with the Army Corps that would take us 25 years out to the point from where we would be taking over the structure. There's a 9-part application, a lot less onerous, and one that we could probably get through a whole heck of a lot quicker. Next slide, please. So we have the renovation, which has really got us getting the community leadership back in August of 2021 out to the lighthouse for a tour, and then also with Jeff and the Conservancy folks to see what the situation was and what was going to be needed to be done. They had done some initial engineering, some initial estimates, and through our state representative at the time, Terry Szabo, we received assistance from state of Michigan and the special legislative appropriation that came in at $800,000, of which we've gotten $400,000 of it so far. And within that, helping us out going forward is a 10% admin fee that I would assume we could use for assistance of any of the costs that we would have moving the project forward up to receiving it and getting the construction underway. The Army Corps of Engineers and the SHPO have said that as we are in a transition between the Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy and the city and ownership, that the project could progress, but that we would have to probably have a development understanding between the two organizations as they would approve the construction project to shore up and get the structure into a position that it would be secure and obviously looking better than it is right now from an exterior standpoint with a new coat of paint. But that such a project could cost maybe twice as much as we currently have in that grant, and we would want to start probably with a phased approach. And if you take a look at the particular structure that's there, there is a base, and then that there's about 70 feet that goes beyond that that's actually the tower, and that there is the hope of the Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy to do the base as the phase one. There was about $125,000 bid, or estimate, not a bid, on that particular part of the work, and that would then be phased in with the rest of it going into the future when funds were raised to make sure that we can complete the entire project. But to get something underway and that the fundraising could start on that rest of the project and the fulfillment of the rest of the money that we would need probably to get that completed. Next slide, please. So there is future liability and maintenance that we would have. It would be ours. We would own it. There would be a deed. The deed, quitclaim deed that the Conservancy received back in 2010, 2011 would be handed on to the city. And there would be a need for upkeep. There are places that we have talked to through DPW at South Haven, Grand Haven, Ludington that have similar agreements, have similar lighthouses that they are looking to maintain and be good stewards of. And that from year to year there may be extensive monies, or there may be no monies needed for that maintenance. But over the course of time, our calls around, it would be somewhere in the average maybe of $10,000. $100,000 over 10 years, but that it would, on an annual basis, be about $10,000 a year in which to upkeep and maintain the structures as we have them. I would suggest that we have discussed with DPW and Parks that this could become part of their department since it is attached to Pere Marquette Beach, and that the Public Works and Engineering could be of assistance as those technical things move forward. The city could fund this through potential donation options. There is a potential of using the Pere Marquette parking kiosks for a donation. And we are still seeing if that can technically happen, but has been discussed, I believe, by the traffic and the parking committees to this point and is being explored. There would be a dedicated fund, not saying that the Community Foundation for Muskegon County would be putting their assets in there, but all of the advised funds of the Community Foundation could be given the opportunity to contribute, or anybody outside of those advised funds in the community or throughout the state, or visitors to our community could then also contribute through a Community Foundation fund. I think the Community Foundation is probably an easier give for some people than giving it to government, even though I think from a tax standpoint, we are such as a nonprofit for our gifts going forward if it were to be given directly to the city. But I would recommend that we would explore with Community Foundation that particular vehicle. And then there would also be potential revenues generated through tours, through a gift shop, and anything fundraising-wise that could be done by a friends group that we will get to here in a second. Finally, the entire south break wall restoration would be, could be as much as another $800,000 beyond the state funding. Completing all phases would take a private philanthropic campaign. I'm not suggesting that the city become involved there unless policy decision would change going forward, but right now we are not in a position to be able to commit to that. But that through city leadership, we can help the community put that campaign together, and hopefully a development fund would be able to be put together at Community Foundation, again, so that major donors, and there are several that are out there that I think are probably willing to come forward and ready to come forward, that would be able to do so through the foundation project fund. Next slide. To do this right, I believe the city, our community, would need a Friends of the Muskegon Lighthouses group. And that is not a city department, it's not city staff, but it's sort of the role that the Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy has had over the course of the last 13 years, having a nonprofit that is there and able to support the lighthouse, and they can put this together here locally, with or without the support of the Michigan Lighthouse Conservancy. I haven't really gotten indication from Mr. Shook whether they would want to become part of that going forward, but that could obviously be something that we would explore and possibly encourage. I believe there are some people here in the audience that would be wanting to take forward that Friends of group. And such a group would provide tours, historical interpretation. There has been a gift shop, and gift shop could go forward. I believe we had an agreement with the chalet, the gray one that was vacated, that they used last year, I think, to a fairly successful note. And then the past efforts have raised over the course of tours, donations, the gift shop, about $10,000 a year. It's nonprofit. It doesn't have to be there. It's not stable. You're going to get it every year, but there is that potential, and even more if we have it locally. If this was done from a local basis, I think we would have more people come forward on that nonprofit volunteer basis to take control and to take pride and to move forward with the interpretation and the tours and all of the celebration of those great edifices. Finally, the Lakeshore Museum Center has said that they would be willing to offer some technical support for the Friends Group as it relates to interpretation, the historic nature of what the Friends Group may be engaging the community with, educational activities, and to have a staff member be a part of that and help us tell the maritime history of Muskegon through those. Next up. What's next? You have a motion in the packet for tomorrow. I believe it is on the consent agenda, in which you are being asked to support in, I guess, concept to formally move us forward with the due diligence process, and that we would direct staff to return for final approval of any purchases, which could be several months or later down the line. But we don't, I believe, want to spend staff resources, time, efforts, and maybe some consultant support if this is something that, at the end of the day, we really don't want to tackle as a project and as a potential liability going forward for the city of Muskegon. Is Jeff still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I open it up for questions, I guess either for Jeff or for myself. We've got DPW with us. Kyle's here for Parks. And Jake will be helping us out.
It's cutting out on your end with all the audio.
Jeff, we'll get you if there's a direct question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Commissioners, questions for staff or Mr. Shook? Commissioner Emery.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Alexander, for answering many of the questions I had, such as who will own it? We will.
Yes.
Yes. And I did ask, and maybe it may be too soon, how we will manage it or man it or woman it or people it as far as tours.
The tours would be a private, we're not suggesting that city become involved with that on our staff or any of, say, our summer staffing that Kyle's putting together for the parks. This is going to be something that would be outside of that as it operates right now.
As it is now.
Correct.
Because I know that we have a team of wonderful, knowledgeable volunteers that
and we hope to give them the support, the backup, and with the Lakeshore Museum Center, the help to make that a good experience for all of them as volunteers and for the people visiting.
Yes. So, and another was, and you answered this, the lease is transferable,
Yes, the lease, well, we would end the lease, instead of transferring it, we would start a new lease up. But the lease is minimal work and issues versus getting the plan with the Preservation Act with the state, with the National Park System. That's the big hurdle to get up over. Speaking with the, after we get through that and get the deed, the lease, I'm sure our corporate counsel office would be able to pull that off pretty quickly with the Army Corps and the GSA,
and
General Services Administration.
Yeah, I know that the residents of our city love our lights. And that alone will make sure that our city government will be good stewards of our lights. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery. Any other questions or comments at this time, Commissioners? Commissioner St. Clair.
I think that it's pretty clear that the lighthouse needs some pretty significant restoration if we are going to keep it.
Interior and exterior.
You know, I know at the last commission meeting that we talked about this, it was discussed that if it is not attended to, it will end up in the lake and will be replaced with a pole on a light. So I think this makes a lot of sense to me for us to get behind it. There's funding available, there's community support, there is an active and passionate volunteer base that really wants to take this work up. So.
You're here. Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. So, the lighthouse itself, the city will assume ownership of, but will be leasing to the pier head on which
We'll be leasing the structure underneath of the lighthouses, be the pier head itself or the end of the pier on the inner harbor.
Okay. So something to, and I'll confer with you after this meeting further, but something to look into if you haven't already is the city's existing lease with the Army Corps of Engineer for the channel and the breakwall property, and then the pier itself. The exhibit, and I just so happened to take a photo of this last fall when I signed that lease. The exhibit shows the pier in there, but
You're
it's unclear.
suggesting to us that we may already have it?
We may already have a lease
Okay.
to access it, or look at amending our existing lease rather than having a separate new lease, because it cost us $10,000 for this lease. So we can just put it on that lease instead of having two separate leases that we're going to have to pay $10,000 separately, because it's just an administrative fee that the Army Corps of Engineer charges us. But I'll confer with you more offline and after the meeting and share that documentation, because if there's an opportunity that we already have it or can just amend our existing lease, that could be the way to go. But yes, I'll just say ditto to Commissioner St. Clair and Commissioner Emery on moving this forward. Commissioner Gorman or Vice Mayor German, do you have anything to ask or add at this time? No? All right. Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners.
All right, next up, sanitation revenue with DPW.
Nice guy.
Welcome, welcome. Let's talk about dollars and cents and keeping our city clean.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening to you and the commissioners. So this is intended to be a discussion about ways to increase revenue for the sanitation fund. The two main portions of what that fund pays for are shown there in the cover sheet of your packet for this item. It pays for the sanitation services that we contract with Republic and that our citizens receive, and it also pays for the street sweeping that we contract with Try Us Services for, and they go out and do 4 sweeps of all of our streets each year. The main source of revenue for the fund is a 3 mil levy that's used for sanitation. However, over the last several years that has not been enough, and so on each citizen's water bill there is a sanitation fee that makes up the difference. The small portion of the funds also come from the sale of bulk stickers, the pink stickers that allow Republic to pick up larger items that don't fit in a trash bag. So the two contracts that this fund supports with Republic and with Try Us both have gone up over the last year. If you'll recall, in January in December, we signed a lease with Republic Services for another 5.5 years, and that contract increased our cost with them. It's detailed in various pieces there below, but in general, it's a couple $100,000 increase. Again, our contract with Try Us Services also we signed up for this year, just meetings ago, and that, 1 meeting ago, that item also increased in cost. That is a 3-year contract that we awarded them, and that one went up about $100,000. So, all of those costs coming together, there is an increase in need of funding for department, or excuse me, for the fund. One of the options on the table would be an increase in the sanitation fee, and certainly one that would make a lot of sense. An increase of 50 cents in this case would generate enough revenue. It is currently $3.50 per month, so an increase of 50 cents to bring it to $4 per month would generate enough revenue. And if anyone would like the specific numbers, the fund last year had $2,379,000 in expenses, and we project, based on those new contracts, we will have $2,580,000 in expenses. So just about $200,000. I've been told by finance that the sanitation millage or levy was going to increase by about $120,000 annually based on property tax increases. So that remaining $80,000 of revenue would be made up by the sanitation fee increase of 50 cents. In the end, the sanitation fund is one that the general fund supports, so it is at your option to raise the fee. Certainly other options might be available to us, but this seemed like the one worthy of discussion tonight.
All right. Thank you, Director Vanderhyde. Commissioners, questions? Vice Mayor German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and Director Vanderhyde. Thank you for the report. What is it that significantly caused the increase of sanitation?
So we have, again, there's two contracts that are paid out of that fund. The one that we pay to Republic, the trash collection service that we pay, that went up by about $100,000. And the street sweeping contract that we use to sweep the debris and trash from the curbs on our streets 4 times a year, that also went up by about $100,000. So those two together increased $200,000, and that is, exact amount, frankly, that the need.
And would that be due to costs on their end, maybe materials, chemicals, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yep. I don't know that I would speculate specifics, but I'm sure that, yeah, similar to what we're all seeing in all walks of life, increased fuel costs, increased material costs, labor costs, those kinds of things, yep.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Emery.
Yeah. Can you explain the recycling cost per unit? What is a unit?
That is, so one way to look at that is like per tip. I believe that's the term used in the industry. So each time they pick up that cart and tip it into the truck. That's essentially the cost it takes for them to
So if our recycling pickup is once a month, it is $4.50 per tip a month, or once a month.
Yes.
Oh.
Yep. $4.78 under the new contract, but yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? You have something to add?
Well, I was just going to say, I guess, just looking for direction, kind of, if you're comfortable with us looking for this fee increase rather than looking at a general fund transfer. Well, I guess it wouldn't be a transfer; it would be just a cost within the general fund, so that we can, as we're going through the budget process this month, we can gauge it on what your comfort level is as the elected officials.
So that increase to the street sweeping, that's not a typo. It went from $180,000 a year to $196 a year.
Yeah, that $180,000 was a contract that we awarded to them 4 years ago. They extended it last year without an additional bid contract. But this year, MDOT required us to do so since we used Trias to sweep the trunk lines in town, and MDOT pays us back for that portion. They required us to bid it out this year. Trias was about half the cost of the other bidder. I believe that's approximately correct. It was just last
Yeah, we
last
just
meeting, I
approved
think.
that.
Yeah.
Not too long ago.
Yeah, so they're still doing a great job for us. They're still their customer service is excellent. They help us sweep special events and the farmers market and other things as we ask. But yeah, certainly I think, as the vice mayor suggested, their fuel costs and labor costs and such have gone up quite a bit over the last 4 years.
Okay. Do we have an opportunity to do, if the commission so desires, to put it on the ballot, but to do a Headley rollback for just the sanitation and not all of our millage rates, but just the 3 mil sanitation? I know that has been we've seen that decrease slightly the rate in recent years. So do we have is that one of the options for raising revenues, of doing a Headley rollback for just the sanitation millage?
We were talking about that earlier.
I think we still have to take it to the citizens for a vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to
So
be
we're
a
thinking
commission to
about-
put it on the ballot. The citizens would vote on it.
We're thinking about
Yes.
doing that for all our rollbacks because we lost money. Regular city budget and the sanitation and other ones. So we were thinking about doing something. I think the school district will want someone to do something like that. Their full rate every time there is a rollback. We're thinking about you have to take it to the citizens.
I don't know if we that would be more of a Schreier question. I think on the components. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'd be interested to know that. The other thing that perhaps we can be mindful of as we go forward is with regard to our various different tax incentives, whether it's brownfield or otherwise, if there can be any kind of caveat carved into it with regard to making sure that we're still generating revenue for sanitation, specifically, because it has to happen, and as new developments coming on, that's only increasing the need for those sanitation services. So if there's a way to preserve some revenue generation that can accrue to defraying this cost of sanitation, so then that cost isn't just put on the shoulders of everyone else. I don't know. I see our Development Services Director, Jake, kind of wanting to chime in. I don't know if he wants... You're welcome to come up and chime in if you would like.
Good evening. Only wanted to remark that 2 points. One, commercial accounts in the city are not subject to the Republic Services waste hauling contract, the single hauler contract that we have, so they bear the costs of their own waste disposal. Second point would be we don't have the statutory authority to only reduce certain millages in that process, so we would have to come up with some sort of separate arrangement outside that statutory tax abatement. And there's some pretty solid case law with cities not prevailing in those cases, where you can't really quid pro quo private companies saying we will grant you this abatement if you do X, Y, and Z. So I would just caution that. But yeah, I think for the most part on commercial contracts, they have to bear their own costs already, and then still pay the sanitation millage. So they are disproportionately funding the residential sanitation while they don't benefit from it.
That's a good point.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ekholm.
And I'll just point out that apartment or multi-unit facilities over 6 units also qualify as commercial. Just maintain their own.
Okay, so they'll have their separate sanitation services they're providing themselves. Okay.
So as the mayor said, or excuse me, as the manager said, just looking for, some either confirmation or direction this evening so that when we present the budget, we can account for sanitation revenue appropriately.
And so the chief thing you're looking for is some level of support for that 50-cent increase.
Yeah.
So it'd be going from $3.50 to $4 a month on all everyone that's end user of our sewer and water. Those bills would be added to that bill.
All residential users of the water system pay this sanitation fee.
Okay. All residential end users. We charge the $4 per month. Okay.
And I guess I would point out it is a direct cost or a benefit, however you want to say it, that the residential users are getting. So if they were to say have a private trash hauling service, this cost would have already probably been passed on to them. So it's not like we're using it for subsidizing revenue in another area. So,
Yeah. This is simply to defray the cost of the service being provided. Okay. And obviously, we need to provide this important service.
Yes, very much so.
No ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's a matter of how do we pay for that service. Okay. So then this will be built into the budget, and formal approval will come by way of adoption of the budget, the proposed budget.
I believe in this case, we may have to bring specific approval, at a future commission meeting, but yeah, just as we prepare and present the budget over the next month or so, it was important to get your direction, even if the approval of that fee increase doesn't happen until closer to July 1st.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions, comments, concerns, support, objections? Commissioner St. Clair.
I think that in one way or another, the citizens are going to pay for this, because if it doesn't come out of a fee, it's going to come out of general fund, which is, for those of you listening at home, all government money is tax dollars. So if it's not a tax, it's a fee, and if it's not a fee, it's a tax. And I think the fact that we've been able to hold this line for 4 years is great. I think $6 a year increase overall is pretty reasonable given the rate of inflation that's happening on everything. So I don't have any better ideas. In lieu of my having better ideas, I'm comfortable with the suggestions being made.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. Anything else to add or ask, Commissioners? Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Okay, just kind of going back here, we're looking at a 50-cent increase. That correct, Director Fender?
It is, and I apologize, but I would just, to Commissioner St. Clair's point, say that we did increase the sanitation fee $1 last year.
Okay.
So it was $2.50 for 3 years in a row. It was $3.50 last year, after recognition that the fund was not keeping up with its own expenses, and then this year would be up to $4. So, my apologies, Vice Mayor.
No problem. No problem. It was stated that you said this could be actually paid with the general fund. Correct. That's an option.
The sanitation, I call it the sanitation fund, but the sanitation department is simply a division of our general fund dollars. So if it doesn't come from the fee, then it would, as Commissioner St. Clair referred to, essentially it would just come out of the other general fund monies, taking away perhaps other services or benefits.
And that's a total of 290,000 plus.
The increase in the amount necessary this year is 200,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any follow-up, Vice Mayor German?
Did I hear you say also a possible levying dollars for like a millage or something like that?
Yes, there's a portion of the taxes that the city collects are specifically designated for sanitation. Three mills of our total. I'm not sure, frankly, what our total is, but 3 mills of that goes to sanitation, and the finance department expects that will generate $1,995,000 this year for the sanitation department, I guess. And the fee then makes up the difference between the revenue we receive from that specific tax and the expenses that the department has.
So I guess my last question would be, okay, we're actually right now we're setting pretty good. We're not in the red or anything like that, are we?
No, I mean, it's just a division of the general fund dollars, so it isn't tracked as a separate fund per se, but no, you're right. As presented this evening, if it were increased 50 cents, then the fund would operate, it would cover its own expenses, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's a question. Thank you, Vice Mayor German. Before I ask my question, I know that you wanted to ask or
Yeah.
add something, Mr. Manager.
So just some insights into our sitting with the general fund right now. So this week we're doing our budget meetings. And the last 2 years in the general fund, we've transferred in money from the ARPA dollars. And this will be the first year we do not have that for a couple of years. So we're adjusting into what that looks like. And so by having, if this fee was to be implemented, it would help with that shift away from not having those ARPA dollars within the general fund. So.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Question for Finance Department, for Finance Director Grant. Might be able to answer it, and I'm putting you on the spot, and maybe you don't have it readily available, but I'm just curious, what were the current living rate for our sanitation millage is. Like for our general, which is capped at 10, I think in the past couple of years during the rollback is now approximately 9.75. So what is our sanitation millage at now approximately?
It was rolled back 2 years in a row. It's about 2.9 something. I don't have it right.
2.9 something.
So, yeah, I could find it.
Do you know if that were to be rolled back to the full 3, how much more that would generate dollar wise approximately?
It'll probably generate. It'll probably be close to the amount that we need.
Okay. So if they were rolled back, then there wouldn't necessarily be a need.
And what I expect in the near future, our taxable values are going to still grow, but we still may have rollback. But so next year we might not even need to increase that number. We might have enough to cover all of it. It depends on the taxable values and all that stuff. So this year we just with the rollback, and our values are growing. We see a lot of development going around town, so we will have additional money in there next year, and we could address it.
Okay.
Keep that number or maybe decrease it. I don't know. I can't tell the future, but we may. But we definitely we're thinking about how to handle those rollbacks and bringing that to the commission and maybe the citizens.
Yeah, and even if that isn't an opportunity for us to pursue in terms of undoing the Headley rollback, so it gets reset at the 3 mills, that's not something that we're going to be able to do right away and build into this fiscal year budget. So it's something that we can further explore with legal counsel about whether that's an option, and then it's up to the commission to decide if we want to put that on the ballot, and then ultimately it's up to our citizen or the electorate to decide if they want to approve that resetting of the sanitation mill to the full 3 mills, in which case we could have the opportunity to undo or lessen the sanitation fee. And I would very much look forward to an opportunity that we can reduce our fees. Or lower them. It seems like we are always in a position to have to increase them. So if we ever get an opportunity to reduce, that would be wonderful.
Yes, it would be.
So, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for finance?
Thank you.
All right, appreciate those insights, Director Grant. All right, I think we have general support that something has to be done. We can't ignore the situation. I don't know if is there any opposition, let me put it this way, to moving forward with a 50-cent increase for at least this fiscal year to address this situation as a sanitation fee? Okay, I'm seeing shaking heads no. So whether we're excited to do this or not, we're not going to block it and oppose it. So thank you, Director Vanderhyde. Thank you, Director Grant. Thank you, Director Ekholm. Team effort. All right, I think that wraps up our agenda items. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to give public comment at this time? Is there anyone on the phone that wishes to give public comment? Has the call-in number been? I haven't seen it.
Probably not.
Maybe we want to
Just
add in the call-in number and then we'll give it a few minutes. So we do have an update on an item from the city manager. So while that number's scrolling, Mr. Manager, you have something to share with us?
So we have gotten a number of questions about what's going on the Hartshorn Peninsula adjacent to Adelaide Point, and that, as I've discussed with some of the commissioners, is part of the PUD that was approved. The work before the trees were cut back on that peninsula was done through consultation with city staff. So we were aware of the work that was going on. There's a lot going on there. So in an effort to help disseminate information, because a lot of these documents are very large documents, the staff has created a Zen City page, which I'll send a link out to the commission tonight so you guys can share that on your social medias or just to folks in general. And it'll just be a good spot to get centralized information on the permits that have been out there, the plans, some visualizations on what the product or what the peninsula will look like once the work is done in that area. So we're just trying to get out as much information as we can on that topic, because it is out there, but like I said, they're big documents. So just wanted to put them all in one spot. So
Excellent. So people will be able to access that.
It's live right now.
Okay.
I don't think we put it on our Facebook. Is it live right now?
It's live. There's a banner at the top of our website.
Okay.
So go to our shorelinecity.com, and there's a banner at the top of the homepage that you'll be able to access that landing page with all that information.
Yep.
All
And
right.
then we'll probably do a Facebook post at some point, and then I'll email you all the link this evening.
Excellent. So the phone number for calling has been scrolling for a few minutes now. Do we have anyone on the line
Not yet.
wanting to give public comment?
Nope.
All right. Then I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. Before I do that, Miss Santiago Sweet. Not putting you on the spot right now because we're going to wrap up and we've got another committee meeting to attend to. But I want to give you the heads up that tomorrow, at the end of our meeting, which should be a very short one tomorrow because everything's on consent agenda, unless we just... Yeah, I shouldn't jinx us. Unless we pull every single item off and give it a great deal of discussion and time, we should have a fairly quick meeting tomorrow. But will you be at tomorrow night's meeting? All right. So I'd welcome you to give a update and inform our community as to what's coming next week with regard to the short-term rental engagement session that we're doing. So just a heads up for tomorrow evening. All right. Anyone calling in? One last chance.
No, Mayor.
All right.
No calls.
Thank you. Commissioners, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner St. Clair, supported by Vice Mayor German or Commissioner Emery. I heard support from both of you over there. Commissioners, all in favor of adjourning, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. German has it.
German.
The ayes for adjournment have it. We are adjourned. Thank you. Take care. Be well.